The small western town woke up slowly under the golden light of dawn. Dust floated in the air, and the sound of horses' hooves echoed faintly down the wooden street. Luke Carson, a poor cowboy, came out of the old livery stable, carrying his saddle on one shoulder. His shirt was faded, his hat was old, and his boots had seen better days. He had no family, no fortune, but he was known as a kind man who never turned away from someone in need. That morning felt like any other. Luke brushed down his horse, a brown mare he called Daisy, and gave her a handful of hay. While he worked, he hummed softly to himself, thinking only of another long day ahead. He had no idea that before the sun set, his quiet life would change forever. Suddenly, shouting broke the calm. Luke looked up, frowning. The voices were coming from the main street. He left the stable and walked toward the sound, his boots crunching on the dirt road. As he got closer, he saw a small crowd gathered near the trading post. The noise grew louder, angry words, harsh tones, and a frightened cry. When he reached the edge of the crowd, Luke saw what everyone was staring at. A young Apache woman stood in the middle of the street. Her hair was long and black, tangled from travel. Her face looked tired, her clothes torn and dusty. Two rough men stood in front of her, shouting and pointing at her as if she had done something terrible. The crowd whispered among themselves, but no one stepped forward. Luke stepped closer. "What's going on here?" he asked in a calm but firm voice. The trader, a heavy man with a red face, turned toward him. "She stole from me," he said angrily. "Right off my counter." Luke looked at the woman. She looked young, maybe 18, maybe a little older. Her hands shook as she held a small bundle of cloth. But she didn't look guilty. She looked scared. Luke softened his voice. "Miss, what's in your hands?" The woman hesitated, then slowly opened the bundle. Inside was only a small piece of bread and a few dried berries. Luke blinked. That was all. She was hungry, Luke said quietly. The trader crossed his arms. "Doesn't matter. She took it without paying," Luke sighed. "How much does it cost?" The man frowned. 15 cents. Luke reached into his pocket and pulled out a few coins, almost all the money he had left. He handed them to the trader. "Then it's paid for." The trader hesitated but took the coins. The crowd began to lose interest. Some people walked away. Others shook their heads. The young woman stood frozen, looking at Luke as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. Luke gave her a small nod. "You're safe now." But instead of leaving, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" Her voice trembled. Luke shrugged a little. "Because it was the right thing to do." He turned to walk away, but her voice stopped him again. "Please, don't leave me here." Luke looked back. Her eyes were full of fear, not just from the men, but from something deeper. She looked lost, like someone who had nowhere to go. "Do you have family in town?" Luke asked gently. She shook her head. "No family. No home. I walked for many days. I thought maybe I could find work." Luke looked around. The people still nearby were watching. He could already feel their judgment. But he couldn't just walk away. He nodded. "Come with me then. My place isn't much, but it's safe." The woman looked uncertain. "You would let me?" Luke smiled faintly. "It's not about letting, it's about helping." He guided her out of town, toward the dry hills where his small cabin stood. The road was quiet, except for the sound of the wind blowing dust along the trail. After a while, she spoke softly. "My name is Naja," Luke, he said. "Nice to meet you, Naya." When they reached his cabin, the sun was already low in the sky. The little house stood near a patch of mesquite trees. It had one room, a cot, a small table, and a fireplace made of stone. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and clean. Luke opened the door and gestured for her to enter. "You can rest here for now," he said. "You look worn out." Naya stepped inside slowly, as if afraid the place might vanish. She sat down at the table, her hands still trembling. Luke poured her a cup of water and gave her a slice of bread. She ate slowly, as if each bite felt strange to her. When she finished, she looked up and said, "Thank you. I did not mean to cause trouble." Luke shook his head. "You didn't folks here just forget what kindness looks like sometimes?" She studied his face. You are not afraid to help me, even though I am Apache. Luke looked into the fire. I don't care about what people call you. Hungry is hungry. Hurt is hurt. We all need help sometimes. Quiet warmth filled the small room. The wind outside howled softly, and the firelight danced on the walls. Naya's eyes grew heavy from exhaustion. Luke noticed and said softly, You can sleep on the cot. I'll take the chair. She started to protest, but he waved a hand. Don't argue. You need rest. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to lie down. Luke covered her with a blanket and sat quietly in the chair, staring at the fire. He felt something strange stir inside him, not romance, but a deep kind of peace. Helping her had made the world feel right again, even if only for a while. Morning came bright and warm. Luke woke to the sound of soft movement. Naya was sweeping the floor with an old broom she had found by the door. She turned and smiled shyly. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to help. Luke smiled back. I don't mind at all. You didn't have to, though. It feels good to do something, she said simply. They shared a simple breakfast of beans and coffee. Luke told her about the small ranch nearby where he worked from time to time. If you want, I can ask if they need extra hands. You might be able to earn some money. Her eyes brightened a little. I can work. I'm good with animals and sewing. That'll help, Luke said. You'll be fine. Got it. But deep down, he worried. He knew the people in town wouldn't welcome her easily. He also knew word would spread fast. By afternoon, when Luke went into town to buy supplies, he could already feel the change. People whispered behind his back. Some stared. Others crossed the street when they saw him. At the general store, the trader from yesterday gave him a long, cold look. You still keeping that Apache girl? He asked. Luke didn't answer. He just paid for what he needed and walked out. He could feel the weight of their disapproval following him all the way home. That evening, Naya sat outside the cabin watching the sunset. The orange light touched her face, soft and calm. Luke joined her with 2 mugs of coffee. You okay? He asked quietly. She nodded. I feel peace here, but I know the town hates me now, Luke sighed. Let them hate. You didn't do anything wrong. Naya looked at him with a gentle expression. You will have trouble because of me, Luke smiled faintly. Trouble finds me anyway. Might as well make it worth something. The air between them was calm and full of unspoken understanding. 2 people from different worlds, both lonely in their own ways, had somehow found comfort in each other's kindness. But as the night settled in, the peace didn't last. When Luke went outside to check on the horse, he noticed something nailed to his door, a small piece of paper with a few ugly words scribbled on it. Send her away or face what's coming. Luke took it down quietly. He didn't want Naya to see it. When he came back inside, she looked up from the fire and asked, Is something wrong? He forced a calm smile. Just the wind playing tricks. But he couldn't stop thinking about the note. He knew there would be more trouble. Still, as he looked at Naya sitting by the fire, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let anyone hurt her. The poor cowboy who once lived only for himself now had someone to protect. And though he didn't know it yet, the real story of their lives was only beginning. The next morning, the sky was soft and gray, and a thin mist hung over the desert. Luke saddled his horse quietly while Naya packed a small bundle of bread and beans for the road. They both knew they could not stay near the town anymore. The people's anger was growing. Luke didn't want things to turn ugly. Naya looked nervous as she watched him tie the saddle. Where will we go? She asked softly. Luke smiled faintly. There's an old ranch a few miles north. It's empty now. Belonged to a man I used to work for. We can stay there for a while until things settle down. Naya nodded, but her eyes were full of worry. They will come after you because of me, she said. Luke shook his head. Let them talk. I care about what's right, not what they think. He helped her climb onto the horse, and they rode away together. Leaving behind the dusty little town that had judged her without knowing her story, the trail was quiet except for the sound of hooves and the soft whistle of the wind. Around them, the desert stretched wide and endless, dotted with dry grass and red rocks. For the first time in a long while, Luke felt something close to peace. Naya rode behind him, her hands lightly resting against the saddle, her head turning now and then to take in the view. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. Luke nodded. "It is. Hard to live in, but beautiful." After a few hours, they reached the old ranch. The place was quiet and half-broken fences leaning. Roof missing a few boards, but there was still a small cabin standing strong against the wind. Luke helped her down and smiled. "It ain't fancy, but it's home for now." Naya looked around and smiled gently. "It's better than any place I've had before." They cleaned the cabin together, sweeping out the dust and setting up a fire. The smell of smoke soon filled the air, and Luke cooked a simple meal of beans and bread. As they sat by the fire that night, the stars appeared one by one outside. The world felt big and quiet, and for a while, they forgot the trouble behind them. Naya looked into the flames and said softly, "When I was little, my mother told me that every kind act creates a small light. Maybe you are that light for me." Luke looked at her and smiled. "Maybe we're both lights for each other." The next few days passed peacefully. They repaired the roof together, fetched water from the small creek nearby, started planting a few seeds Luke had kept in a tin box. Naya laughed for the first time in weeks when Luke tried to show her how to patch the old fence and got his sleeve stuck on a nail. "You're worse at fixing fences than I thought," she teased. Luke chuckled. "I'm better at breaking them, I guess." For a while their days were quiet and filled with small joys, simple meals, gentle laughter, and long evenings watching the sunset. But peace in the desert never lasted long. One evening, as Luke rode to the nearby town to buy salt and coffee, he noticed a few men whispering near the store. When they saw him, they stopped talking and glared. Luke didn't speak. He just took his supplies and left. But as he rode away, he heard one of them say, "That cowboy thinks he can hide her forever." We'll see about that. He didn't look back, but he felt a knot in his chest. He rode home faster that night. When he reached the ranch, Naya was outside feeding the horse. She smiled when she saw him, but quickly noticed the worry on his face. "Something happened?" she asked. Luke sighed. "Just some folks talking. But we need to be careful." Jaya nodded. "I can leave if you want." "I don't want to bring danger to you." Luke shook his head firmly. "You're not leaving. You're safe here." That night, Luke couldn't sleep. He sat near the door, listening to the wind and thinking about the town's hatred. He wasn't afraid for himself. He'd faced hard men before, but he couldn't bear the thought of Naya getting hurt. She had already suffered enough. When dawn came, he decided on something. "We'll move further north," he said, as she poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "There's a small settlement near the river. Good folks live there. They don't care who you are, only how you treat others. Maybe we can start fresh." Naya looked at him with quiet trust. "If you go, I'll go with you." They packed what little they had and set out again. The road north was rough, winding through dry canyons and open plains. Some days were hard sun too hot, food too little, but they kept going, talking to pass the time. Luke told her about his past, how he once dreamed of owning land and a herd of cattle. But life had other plans. Naya told him about her tribe, her family, and how she had lost them during a sickness that swept through their camp. Both stories carried sadness, but sharing them made the road lighter. One afternoon they stopped near a stream to rest. Luke was filling the canteen when he noticed Naya kneeling near a patch of wildflowers. She was smiling. "My mother used to say, 'These flowers grow where hearts are kind,'" she said. Luke smiled softly. "Then maybe they grow wherever you go." Naya blushed and looked away, but her eyes shone with warmth. It wasn't romance that grew between them, it was something deeper. Something built on trust and gratitude. By the time they reached the river settlement, a week had passed. The people there were kind and curious, but not cruel. Luke found work helping on a small farm, mending fences and caring for horses. Naya began sewing clothes for a local family who paid her in food and fabric. Slowly, they built a simple life. Luke built her a small garden by the cabin they rented. Every evening they would sit outside and watch the sun sink behind the hills. One evening, farmer's wife came by and said, "You two make a good team." Folks around here could learn a thing or two from you. Luke smiled, but his eyes softened. We've both been through rough trails. Makes you value peace when you find it. Months passed. The fears of the old town faded into memory. Naya's laughter became common in the small settlement, and Luke's quiet strength earned respect from everyone who met him. Together, they had built something no money could buy, a sense of belonging. One afternoon, a wagon came rolling into the settlement from the south. Luke was fixing the corral gate when he recognized one of the men from his old town. His heart tightened, but the man didn't look angry. He climbed down from the wagon and tipped his hat. "Luke Carson," the man said awkwardly. "Heard you were up here?" "We came to say we were wrong." Luke looked at him in surprise. "Wrong about what?" "About that Apache girl," the man said. "Word got around that she helped those ranchers near here when their horses broke loose last month. Folks started talking different. Guess people finally saw her for who she really is." Luke smiled faintly. "Took them long enough." The man nodded. "Maybe, but some things take time to change." When Luke told Naya later that day, her eyes filled with quiet tears. "I didn't think anyone would ever see me as good again," she whispered. Luke touched her shoulder gently. "Sometimes it just takes one act of kindness to start changing hearts. You proved that." As the sun dipped low, they stood by the river, the golden light reflecting off the water. Naya looked at the horizon and said softly, "When I met you, I was lost. I thought no one in this world could be kind. But you showed me hope." Luke smiled, his eyes warm. "You gave me something too, Naya. You reminded me what it means to care again." The wind carried their words into the fading evening. The world around them was quiet, peaceful, and kind. The poor cowboy who once stood alone had found family where he least expected it. And the young Apache woman who once faced the world with fear now faced it with courage. And though life would never be easy, they both knew one truth. Sometimes the smallest act of mercy could heal two broken souls and light up the whole desert.